I just listened to a talk, an interview, well, the discussion between Stefan Molyneux and this American college guy, professor, whatever, and they were talking about the Crusades, and it was quite nauseating actually. They have this whole idea, and I'm getting also tired of these non-Europeans, and when I say non-Europeans, I'm talking about Americans, Canadians, who don't actually live here in Europe, and are not, they have a romanticized version, ultimately through Christianity, of the history of Europe, and it's very misleading. There's a lot of people out there thinking that the Crusades was some kind of great Christian sacrifice for Europe. It was nothing of the sort. The Crusades was absolutely as disastrous for Europe as Islam. And some of the Moors or the jihadists coming over from, the Ottoman Empire. The history is as clear as anything. While Muslims were taking over southern Europe and Iberia, you had put the light on. You had Crusaders obsessed with Jerusalem. When you had Muslims taking over Europe, you had Crusaders launching not one but three crusades from Sweden into the Baltic states to exterminate or convert the Karelians and the other Baltic tribes, the East Prussians, the last of the... This is really obnoxious, hold on, there we go. The last of the... The last of the pagan tribes in the Baltic region, and the last of the Prussian pagan tribes. Now these people were European, they just weren't Christians, and as anyone who has any kind of, intellectual faculty is aware, that Christianity is a completely alien Middle Eastern religion, a death cult that's basically a form of weaponized Judaism that was an offshoot Judaism, that even the Jews were afraid of it, was so radical, that has nothing to do with Europe, nothing at all. And here they were talking what came across as some kind of gospel revival hour, and it was really quite obnoxious. Now, I would hate people to... Now, they're entitled to talk about what they want, but I would ask people not to assume that that's the whole story. See, the biggest problem I have with this alt-right thing is the Christianity part of it. I utterly despise Christianity, and I utterly have no time for it. And there seems to be a big push by the likes of Stefan Molyneux and others in that movement, not all, it has to be fair, it's fair to say, to basically say that Christianity is the buffer against Islam. Well, the only reason that the Muslims didn't take over Europe is because the Mongol Empire attacked them, and they basically annihilated them in Iraq and Persia and Mesopotamia, and so they never really had that's what gave the Christians a break. Otherwise, Islam would have easily taken over all of Europe. It wasn't. The Crusaders were obsessed with Jerusalem, and always have been, and then through all their following organizations, the Knights Templar, the Knights of St. John, the Knights of Malta, it's always Jerusalem, until they finally gifted the Middle East or Israel to world Zionism in 1947. This was after centuries of Europeans basically obsessed with it for reasons I still don't understand. Now, not only did the Crusaders annihilate the pagan tribes, European peoples of the Baltic, but also prior to that, you had the likes of Charlemagne, who wiped out the Saxons at Verdun. You've also have the Albigenese Crusades, which wiped out the Cathars in southern France. There was no survivors, and these were all they were a Christian sect, but they were considered heretical because they didn't believe that Jesus died on the cross. Even that was enough to have them exterminated by the Christians. So that Stefan Molyneux Crusader Christian interview with that gentleman, it's it's really a poison chalice in many ways. You're only getting the same old Jesuitic Christian European story, whitewash, very nice, self-infatuated version of something that was much darker for Europe. I, as a European heathen and pagan, I make no distinction between the Crusaders and the jihadists. They're both a Middle Eastern religious fanatic sects that were trying to take Europe over, and always have been. And Europe can never be free until it's rid of all these Abrahamic religions, and we develop or re-establish some kind of new version or reconstructed form of paganism or heathenism going forward. In fact, I know it's the future. Christianity and Islam will die, and heathenism will always be here. Catholicism is basically heathenism, paganism anyway. And so that's it. Like, don't watch that documentary and come away thinking, Europe was saved by the Crusaders, when the Crusaders were just as genocidal against Europeans as they were against anyone else. And the whole idea of that the Crusaders, it was all about holding back the jihadists. Well, that's not true at all, because all you have to do is look at Muslim Spain and Portugal and southern Italy. The Crusaders didn't even bother with them. They were too busy killing European white pagans, for God's sake.